Good evening, everybody. This is Oceanus, and today we are covering the Iranian-American ceasefire. Last Tuesday, if you weren't aware, it was going to be Bridges and Power Plants Day, according to the president, where he had set the deadline for Iran to open up the Strait of Hormuz, and it looked as if the civilization, as he put it, was going to end, but at the last hour on Tuesday, there was a deal reached for a ceasefire, and that ceasefire has been holding since Tuesday. However, last night, Vice President JD Vance met with the Iranian delegation in Islamabad, Pakistan, and after hours and hours of negotiations, he came out and said that there was no deal. And as a result, the president truthed this morning that effective immediately, the United States Navy will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz, and that he's also instructed our Navy to seek and interdict every vessel in international waters that has paid a toll to Iran. No one who pays an illegal toll will have safe passage on the high seas. The blockade will begin shortly. I know when that is, and I'll get to that in a minute. So, this is interesting to me because I didn't see this coming. So the argument was if the Iranians were going to were going to open the Strait of Hormuz, that we would bomb them back to the Stone Age and erase the civilization. But now that negotiations have failed, at least for now, now we, the U.S., are going to be the ones blockading the strait. I I guess that's. I mean, the strategy seems interesting considering now the strait will be blockaded on our terms, and Iran probably won't like that. But again, I didn't see it coming. And Monster Z over here sounds like the U.S. is trying to hold the world hostage. That would be very, very amazing if that were true. But I don't think that's the case. You should subscribe to Monster Z. He's great. I like him. I kind of disagree with him some of his takes lately, but overall he's a good guy. Um, so yeah, this happened this morning. This is what he said. And so instead of Iranians extorting the Strait of Hormuz, now we're going to be doing it. So there's like a double blockade on the strait now. You have the Iranians blockading the strait, and then you have us blockading the strait. Woe be to any ship that tries to cross these waters at any point in time from tomorrow to however long this goes on for. And here's the Central Command article. U.S. to blockade ships entering or exiting Iranian ports. Well, it's just a post. The U.S. Central Command forces will begin implementing a blockade of all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports on April 13th, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, in accordance with the President's proclamation. The blockade will be enforced impartially against vessels of all nations, entering and departing Iranian ports and coastal areas, including all Iranian ports on the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. CENTCOM forces will not impede freedom of navigation for vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz to and from non-Iranian ports. Okay, but at the same time, how do you differentiate? How do you differentiate that? I don't get that, but okay. Additional information will be provided for commercial marinas through a formal notice prior to the start of the blockade. All mariners are advised to monitor notice to marinas broadcasts and contact U.S. naval forces on bridge-to-bridge Channel 16 when operating the Gulf of Oman and Strait of Hormuz approaches. So we're not. So are we blockading the strait, or are we just blockading Iranian ports? Because it sounds to me like we're not going to um impede vessels that aren't docking or coming from Iran. So can this really be called a Hormuz blockade or an Iran blockade? That's kind of confusing. But and also, how do you differ? I guess they're gonna contact But what's stopping them from just lying? Like, heck yeah, I'm not going to Iran, I'm going to Kuwait. Or I'm going to the eastern coast of Saudi Arabia. Like, anybody can say this stuff, but I don't know, maybe they have a way of knowing. I'm not a mariner, I'm not a seaman or sailor. And this is saying, to what end? Let's say China transits the strait the tank of newly purchased oil. Are you going to prevent them from continuing on? Why? Do you want to start a shooting conflict with China? Okay, no, here's the thing. I don't want a shooting conflict with China, but no one's afraid of China. Here's the issue. China does not have a navy. I mean, they do, but they don't have one as vast as ours. And when you're fighting a geographically distant enemy, having a navy and an air force are essential. The reason why America has as good as logistics as we do is because we have a very vast navy. Because we weren't walking anywhere if we were to go to a military conflict. So again, no one is afraid of China because they just don't have the means to get to us. And in addition to the announcement, we have very heavy U.S. Air Force transport activity. These planes are going to and from the CENTCOM area of responsibility, providing probably restocking materials. And this is the other thing from an Iranian standpoint. I don't think this ceasefire was a good idea. If I were an Iranian, I would not want a ceasefire because I would assume like this is showing us that the enemy will just stock up, use the extra time that they're not being shot at to airlift supplies and men to the area. I don't understand why Iran, who was so ready to seemingly say, "Hey, no ceasefire," suddenly accepted one. But it's just because they have the reformist faction in power, and those guys are idiots. Speaking from a pro-Iranian standpoint, that is. And here's also this: President Trump and his advisors are looking at resuming limited military strikes in Iran to the U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz as a way to break the stalemate in peace talks, according to officials and people familiar with the situation. Okay. Well, if we do that, then what? Then we may as well just not have the ceasefire. If we're going to be going back to this, and we need to be prepared to not do the ceasefire, and if we are going to do this, he needs to be prepared to carry out his threat to end civilization. Because if not, we're just going to do this dog and pony show every couple weeks where, oh, it looks like we're about to have a ceasefire or we're about to have a deal, and then we just don't have a deal, and then we have to do the same thing every other week. Like, I'm going to be honest with you all, I don't really like this war, but at the same time, I would like one side to definitively win or lose so that the other can it can just stop being a problem for the other side, because I'm tired of being in the Middle East. I want us out of there. It's just annoying. But again, I don't see what the benefit of the ceasefire really was to anybody. Because if both sides claimed to have the initiative and had the ball rolling in their direction, so why would you want a ceasefire? It just doesn't make sense. Why allow your enemy to stock up and have breathing room? But anyway, I just wanted to give a quick update on that. We'll see what happens at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Um, I will be just getting up at that time because I live on the East Coast. And I think the next video I'm going to make is on immigration because I have been seeing a lot of good progress on that. I have a lot of bookmarks here. But anyways, have a good day, guys, and please like, subscribe, and share if you like this video, and comment too. I like your feedback. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.